sure know where I've been, hanging on the promises and songs of yesterday. And I've made up my mind, I ain't wasting no more time. Here I go again. Here I go again. Though I keep searching for an answer, never seem to find what I'm looking for. Lord, I pray you give me strength to carry on, 'cause I know what it means to walk along the lonely street of dreams. And here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone. And I've made up my mind, I ain't wasting no more time. I'm just another heart in need of rescue, waiting on love's sweet charity. And I'm gonna hold on for the rest of my days, 'cause I know what it means to walk along the lonely street of dreams. And here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone. And I've made up my mind, I ain't wasting no more time. But here I go again. Here I go again. Here I go again. Here I go. Cause I know what it means to walk along the lonely street of dreams. And here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone. And I made up my mind, I ain't wasting no more time. And here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone. 'Cause I know what it means to walk along the lonely street of dreams. And here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known.
Don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way. Don't ask for all your things back, cussing out my name, yeah, just to go and take back what you say. Burn all the bridges, don't ask forgiveness, walk away like I'm someone you hate. Don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way.
it's over, so fuck it. Just don't act like my love wasn't nothing. Like I wasn't the one you was holding that night, telling all of your secrets and hugging. Guess you right, it's too good to be true. Was a point, all I needed was you. But shit, time after time, I just fussing and fighting. It's time that you do what you do. And it's cool. Mama said it was fish in the sea, I got lost in the pool. Knew it was coming, I watched how you move, how you turn your back on me and leave me to lose. Remember the text, how you said that you do. Said that you never leave, we would fight till it's due. But as it went on, I was fighting for you. Since the text turned green, why the fuck it ain't blue? Guess you done and I get it. Said you stay and you wanted my name and you left, so I'm guessing that you never meant it. Said you try and hold on cause the love was so strong, now I'm standing alone in this kitchen. Singing sad songs, but I'm knowing that this shit don't last long. If you leaving, then leave cause your bag's gone. But just know you can never come back home.
Don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way. Don't ask for all your things back, cussing out my name, yeah, just to go and take back what you say. Burn all the bridges, don't ask forgiveness. Walk away like I'm someone you hate. Don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way.
If you say that you done, ain't no take back. Said you fell out of love and I hate that. But see me, I was stuck like a drug, really feeling for love, and somehow I can't shake back. When you walked out that door, I was hurting. All the dreams in my head, you was perfect. You remember the very first time that we chilled and I reached for your hand where the nerves at. Time to pass, shit, that's what it do. It be times I be sick sitting thinking about you. It was death do its part. See, you gave me the blue, really played with my heart. Left me lost and confused, like this shit was fair game. But you made it the rules. On my heart, left a scar and a bruise. Hope that you can stand on all the shit that you did. I'm done, y'all finally through.
Don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way. Don't ask for all your things back, cussing out my name, yeah, just to go and take back what you say. Burn all the bridges, don't ask forgiveness. Walk away like I'm someone you hate. Don't let me down easy. If you're gonna leave me, baby, go and leave me all the way.
Do you have the time to listen to me whine about nothing and everything all at once? I am one of those melodramatic fools, neurotic to the bone, no doubt about it. Sometimes I give myself the creeps. Sometimes my mind plays tricks on me. It all keeps adding up. I think I'm cracking up. Am I just paranoid? Am I just up? I went to a shrink to analyze my dreams. She says it's like a sex that's bringing me down. I went to a whore. He said my life's a bore. Choke with my white cause it's bringing her down. Sometimes I give myself the creeps. Sometimes my mind plays tricks on me. It all keeps adding up. I think I'm cracking up. Am I just paranoid? Grasping to control, so I better hold on.
the last few years where our attrition, our turnover rate for security staff was 60%.
If I want to pretend I'm Joe Doe and take your image, your face, your video, your voice, and I want to replicate that, you know, I want to be able to authenticate that and say, hey, this isn't Joe speaking to me. There's got to be something off there.
Everyone has a part in the security and safety of all of our guests and employees. And it doesn't stop just if security is in your title.
You guys communicate and have synergy with security and surveillance and cyber and even marketing and player development. And for so long, Joe, those departments were sideload departments.
I'm going to pull your heart out of your chest and shove it down your throat. Smoke them and then hit them over the head with it. Whatever you have to do, you have to have that kind of mentality.
If there's a way out, get the fuck out. You know?
Yep. If people paid attention more, there'd be less victims who probably wouldn't have been a victim if they would have been eyes up.
If you want to learn how to truly protect yourself and how to secure yourself, you should learn from someone who does it for a living or someone who has gotten away with it.
You'd be surprised how well you will do if you just fight for your life.
All right, welcome everyone to SVIP Live. My name is Taylor May, the founder of Security VIP, SVIP for short. I'm excited today. It is a stormy day here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so wherever you're tuning in from the world, hopefully it's sunny and temperature is cool, but it is a stormy day here in Dallas. I'm excited because today I'm featuring another professional in the healthcare sector. And if you're new to SVIP Live, this is a series where I do live interviews with end users inside the security industry. Before I introduce this gentleman, I do want to give a shout out to my sponsor, Imran Corporation. If you guys do not have heard of Imran Corporation, he hosts awesome conferences at NFL football stadiums. He's got a conference coming up, I think in June. It's actually up where our guest lives, up there in the MetLife Stadium. But the most important conference that you should go to is at AT&T Stadium, home of the Dallas Cowboys, of course. That's in October. So you guys check out Imran Corporation. Well, let's get to it, guys and girls. I want to introduce the man himself, Mr. Brian Natale. He's the VP of Physical Asset Growth and Operations for Summit Health. And the best kind of description I can give this guy in a nutshell is he's like a unicorn in the healthcare hospitality sector because he's got security, facility operations, design, construction. And you don't really see that a lot in the security industry in general, especially not in healthcare when you've got 3 different kind of jurisdictions all funneling up to one person. Brian is that guy. So Brian, my friend, welcome to SVIP.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Very excited.
I'm excited to have you here, man. So why don't you just give a little context about your background? I know I probably butchered it, man. You can probably do a lot better than I can introducing yourself, but give our listeners kind of your context in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. So Brian Natale, SVP Physical Asset Growth and Operations for Summit Health. Been with the organization for about 18 to 19 years. I'm starting to lose track. It's been a great run. My original start was in the security industry, and that's how Taylor found me. That's where my start came from. I was brought into this particular organization to build the original security program as the organization began to grow and scale somewhere around 2006. So my original background was security, and prior to that, I almost entered into the law enforcement field. I went to college for that with the desire to come out to go into law enforcement. I was a dispatcher for a few years, and just before I went to the police academy, I had an offer put forth to me to get into private security. And quite frankly, at the time, this was probably back in '99, I didn't even really know what security was, right? My whole focus was siloed to law enforcement. And quite frankly, I didn't even know that the security industry existed, 20, 23 years ago when I decided to take this jump. But long story short, I took a leap of faith, and instead of going into the police academy, I took this opportunity that was presented to me quite a long time ago, went into corporate security, running security for high-rise buildings down in North New Jersey. I had 3 Class A high-rise buildings. It was right around the time of September 11th. I started probably 60 days in the industry before September 11th. So I very quickly got my sea legs after that very unfortunate day. I was hip deep in it. I had high-rise buildings down in North New Jersey which obviously had extreme proximity to what was going on in Lower Manhattan. So, from there, my security knowledge base and just my career kind of, was rock solid foundation, and my entire world became security after that event. Right, that was all I knew, and I was going to learn and establish myself to be the best I could in the industry after those events. So about 4 years down in Newark, and then I got recruited into the organization that I'm in now in order to build the corporate security program for a scaling healthcare organization. I was really fortunate because I was able to come in from the ground up to this organization. Essentially, there was no security operation that existed. And for those of you out there that are in the security field, it's always nice to build from the start, right? You can establish your own platforms, your own foundations. You're not coming in and cleaning up someone else's mess or trying to figure out, what was there and trying to fix it. So I was really fortunate in that aspect that I was able to build a program from ground up. About 8 years in, as Taylor mentioned, I'm kind of a unicorn. People often ask me, and I'll get into this a little later, like, what exactly is it that you do today? And I'll be honest, I have a tough time answering that question, right? I know exactly what I do today, and it's, security is my background, and that's still a very large foundation. But as was mentioned, I also have facilities and maintenance that falls under my scope, and also design and construction for healthcare for all of our locations. It's hard for me to explain, right? When someone in the security industry says, "What do you do?" I generally just stick to that one area that person knows, because I don't know how to explain the other areas. So I've come up with kind of a personal branding tagline to help me, and it's build, run, protect, right? So I have very talented teams. Don't get me wrong. Everyone that works underneath me are the rainmakers and help us do what we do every day. But I have a build, run, protect team. We essentially build a building. We then operate it through our facilities and maintenance, and then through our security division, we protect it. And just 2 cents on how I wound up there. A lot of people ask me, you were the security guy, quote unquote, the security guy back in the day. How did you get into building buildings and, running maintenance and facilities and understanding BMS systems and HVAC and ventilation systems? It was quite frankly trial by fire. I was the security manager back in the day. I had a wonderful leader who I reported to on a C-suite level, and that leader was in charge or overseeing all of our construction. And at the time, as the security professionals that are on this video interview can possibly imagine, anytime you're involved with security and there's construction going on, right, you're hip deep in it. You got to know that the project's taking place. You got to be kind of standing over the project, right? Who's coming on your site? What kind of access controls are there? Just general knowledge of the overall construction or renovation or what's happening, right? So I was always that guy that was kind of the annoying security guy that was, standing over the whole of the contractors, saying, what's that? What's this? What are you guys doing? Who's coming here? What's the schedule? And, long story short here in a lot of words, we were in the midst of, we have one location that's about 300,000 square feet. And we were in the midst of adding a third MRI. And my boss at the time was, overseeing that. I had knowledge of the project on the periphery of, that it was happening and, from a security perspective. And one day my boss walked into my office and, going back in time, things weren't digital. And she had a big binder that was related to this construction project that was ongoing. And she basically said to me, she said, listen, I've just accepted another opportunity that was presented to me in New York City. And, in 6 weeks, I'm going to be leaving. And of course, I was devastated and wanted to know what this big binder was that she was holding. And she literally dropped it on my desk and said, this is the binder for the MRI construction project. And I trust no one else but you to be able to take the reins of this and complete it. And I kind of looked at her and, it's a pivotal moment. It's right. Yeah. What do you do? Do you figure it out, or do you stick your head between your legs and run off and say, I can't do this. It's not for me. Right. But I'm not that type of person. Right. So I took that binder, I flipped through it. I self-taught myself. And that was kind of the entry into the design and construction world and the healthcare design and building world, which then kind of parlayed itself into just general operations, which parlayed itself into real estate and facilities and maintenance. Fast forward to where I am today, I have 3 wonderful teams that I run for the organization. When I started, we had about 6 locations. I had no gray hair. We have about 600 locations now, ranging in size from 1,500 square feet to 300,000 square feet. So it's been quite a journey, quite an experience of very fortunate for me to be exposed to this, to be able to, one, be part of a growth explosion in an organization of that nature. I always call it kind of the hockey stick line of growth, right? We literally had 6 locations, and then a couple of years later, we had 50. A year later, we had 150. And a year later, a couple of years later, we have where we are now, 600 some odd locations, multi-state operation. So I'm very fortunate to be involved with that and have been exposed with that. And what I will say is I've learned a lot of lessons that I can share here related to security, the synergies between construction, design, the importance of synergies between construction, design, facilities, and security. And a lot of the lessons that I've learned, right? Some of them being the hard way, 15 years ago, as we started this journey, there were a lot of silos still, right? I was the security guy, and not necessarily were the design and the facilities teams synergetic yet, right? Everybody kind of had their own march of what they needed to do, right? It was very siloed of, hey, listen, the construction team's got to design a building and build it, and that's their goal, right? And the facilities team has got to run it, and that's their goal. And then, as we all know, as security professionals, security is usually last on the list, right? And that's where we would come in and then have to pick up and look at these projects. But fortunately, sitting on top of these 3 wonderful divisions now, I'm able to make sure that security is at the top of the list whenever we're building something. And there was a point in time where we had, 75 to 100 construction projects going on at a single time. And I often say to people, I was so fortunate again, I think there were projects that we did in, maybe a 1 or 2 year period that were so numerous that most people in their entire career are not fortunate enough to say that they built 100 projects over a 30-year period. So I was really fortunate to be able to have this experience and continue to be here today, and hopefully share some thoughts and insights of these 3 disciplines that I kind of oversee, and the importance of how they all fit together as a puzzle piece.
Well, I was just going to say, Brian, I hope you're compensated fairly with 3 different jurisdictions and departments that you're managing. And you mentioned adding additional locations. It's like it's the same thing in the sales world, man. They want the quota to be higher every single year. It's like, well, you're going to add more overhead to me. I need more responsibility. I need more payment for that too. I need more financial compensation for that. So I think it's important, Brian, because you're 100% right, man. When you look at design and aesthetics and construction, security, you're right, is always at the tail end of that. It's never at the forefront of that. So I want to bring that up because, again, you're dealing with 3 different departments. I want to talk about the synergy between those departments, how you get everyone on the same page. How do you make sure that security is prioritized in the very initial phase of design and construction versus after the fact? Because all too well, they've designed something and then something new comes out, you can't implement it, or they have to reconstruct something. I want to talk about that as well. So maybe share about the synergy within those 3 departments that you created. Because again, man, you're right. Not just healthcare, but like any other industry you look at, there's always been silos between different kinds of departments, but we've never had one person really manage that all. So talk me through the communication chain, approval chain. How is everything prioritized? How is everyone getting along?
Sure.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I'm glad that the thing that you just said last about how everybody's getting along, that honestly is one of the most crucial and most important pieces of everything, right? So making sure that the teams get along, and that starts at the top, right? So I need to emulate the behaviors that I expect my teams to have towards each other, right? That's the first thing. It starts from the top. And I make sure to do that on a daily basis. So I call it the barstool team approach. That's what I always tell my team. And what I mean by that is, right, facilities maintenance, design, construction, security operations. You think of a bar stool. Bar stool has 3 legs and it's got a platform on it. If you take any one of those 3 bar stool legs out in a project, in an effort, in whatever we're doing on a daily basis, it's no longer a bar stool, right? You need all 3 legs in order for that structure to be something, right? To be able to support or to be a successful structure. So that's my daily approach with my teams. And, selecting the right people, making sure that they get along, and making sure that they understand the barstool team approach. So when we approach a project, whether it's a new construction, a de novo build out, a renovation of an existing site, I have essentially construction project managers on the one barstool leg through my design and construction team who know right off the bat that my background is security. They know that my security director needs to be consulted and brought into the mix, as well as my facilities and maintenance teams, right? It's just inherently known.
Right.
So when we're building a budget and my team is building a budget for a construction project, we have template budget sheets that we have built out, and we've developed security, facilities, and everything that goes along with that into those concept budget sheets. So it can't be missed, right? So if we're designing something new, we have room for access control. We have room for camera systems. If it's a renovation, is this the time to upgrade equipment that may be there? And we can talk about that a little bit later about the efficiencies of making sure that you're, leveraging a construction project for the efficiencies and economies of scale to get your best financial impact, right? So, and that's so important on the security side when you're dealing with upgrading systems. But, back to that barstool team approach is, our teams are all in the same room. That's what it comes down to, right? And just like I always say to my people, just like boats in a marina that are moored to their docks, when the tide comes in, the boats rise together. Yep. When the tide goes out, the boats sink together. So we rise together as a team, or we sink together as a team. So I don't look at my design and construction team and say, look, you successfully built this building, great job, but facilities and maintenance and security, you didn't hold up your parts, so you failed. But hey, design and construction, great. That's not the way I operate it. We are all one team. And if one barstool leg of that project, or again, whatever it is that we're doing, whatever effort that we're taking upon, if one leg doesn't fail, to me, the project's a failure, right? And we need to figure out what happened, how do we fix it? And what I will say is, fortunately, that rarely happens now. I've got such a good team. I've got such a team that gets along with each other, that collaborates with each other. And often, they don't even come to me. They're dialoguing together, which is great. And that's what it's all about, right? It's the collaboration of the teams together. And more importantly, it's each, and this is the recommendation I would give out there, because I undertook this effort and it's worth it, is one, build the right team, pick the right leaders. Okay, that's obviously very important. But number 2 is, after you get those leaders in place, educate those leaders of the respective areas and disciplines of the importance of each other's roles, right? So why does my security director need to be involved? What is the importance of card access? What is the importance of intrusion detection systems? What is the importance of camera placement and making sure that, once cameras are placed on a CAD layout, that the ductwork doesn't get placed in front of the camera systems, right, now to block views. So everything, everything relies on one another, right? And vice versa. I make sure that my security team is versed on what the goals are for the design and construction team, right? And obviously, we all talk money, right? So when I'm building a building or doing a renovation, I'm always pushing my teams, all 3 of them. We want to have the best financial project possible, right? We want an efficient project. We want a financially viable project. I tell my teams, when we spend $1 of this organization's money, pretend like you're spending your own money, period.
I like
Okay.
that.
If it's
Yeah.
coming out of your pocket, would you do this? And that's kind of what I've always put out there. And my teams are great at that. But at the same time, I also set the stage with them that we don't want to be foolish, right? And if we're going to save money, but in the long run, there's going to be some sort of an implication to that savings, let's bring that forward and let's evaluate that. I always say the cheapest is not the best, right? Particularly in healthcare, it's really important. You know, if you're building a warehouse or, you know, and please not to, talk down to any other type of project, but, you know, if you build a warehouse that you're storing stuff into, you don't have thousands of patients coming in on a daily basis, right? So the risk is a little bit less, right? Not that it's any less important that, you know, the project has to be right or construction has to be right and structurally sound, things of those natures. But when you're dealing with healthcare, right, it's a whole different animal. You know, you have thousands of patients coming in that there's safety issues that have to be accounted for. You know, when you're putting in medical equipment, this equipment is very sensitive. You have to make sure that you have the right power conditioners, because you get one power blip, you can blow out a $2 million MRI, you know, with a power spike. So there's all kinds of mechanicals and engineerings and things that need to be taken into account. Now, you know, again, can you save $300,000 by not putting in a power conditioner? Yeah, you sure can. Would I ever in a million years allow my construction or design team to come to me and say, let's not put a power conditioner on our MRI? Absolutely not, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
one power blip, we lose a $2 million MRI. Do the math, it's risk versus reward. So, you know, again, in a lot of words, just making sure that the cross collaboration is there, that the teams are talking to each other, but making sure that the teams are educated on each other's goals and why they're doing what they're doing, right? Because once you appreciate why my security team needs or is asking for X, Y, and Z. Why is the security team asking for sleeve conduits down that wall? That's going to add another, you know, I'm making up numbers, $15,000 to the overall project. Why do we need that? Well, we need that because it's going to save $10,000 on the installation of the low voltage, because we're going to have pull strings that are already in place when the walls are closed, right? So that's the reason why. And the one thing I've done, and I'm really proud of, is I've educated my security team on how to be involved with the design and construction aspects of a project. So very rarely are we bringing in a third party who is going to say, yeah, you need a camera there, you need a camera here, right? I pride myself that my teams are doing that internally. My security director that I hired and had probably a 6-hour interview with before I brought him on board a number of years ago, and I call him kind of my mini me. He's designing where the cameras go, right? And you know, we're having a third party install do the actual install, but we're controlling where things are going, why they're going there, where is that glass break sensor going, why is that intrusion detection going here, why is that camera going here? What, you know, we're controlling all that. And again, you know, when you look at you start to fold in the facilities and maintenance team, right? Why are they important? They have to operate the building at the end of the day, right? The construction team's going to build it and ultimately hand off the keys to the facilities and maintenance team. And they ultimately have to take the reins to operate that building. And does it have the right BMS system, right? Can it talk to the main BMS system that we currently have? Will that platform integrate? You know, things of that nature that I think a lot of projects fail to recognize up front, and they don't realize it until after the ribbon cutting. And then it's like, oh shit, we can't control the temperature properly, right? And so is hot. And in order to control that temperature, I need to have a guy in a pickup truck now drive 20 minutes to the site because the BMS system wasn't properly networked on a platform that can integrate into our system where my facilities team can control it from an iPhone, right? So those are the things up front that are so important, having those synergies across those three disciplines. And I can go on and on and on with examples of the three, but I think you get the point of the collaboration, the synergy, and ultimately the cost effectiveness, right? When the building is open and operating, and quite frankly, in 10 years from now, still having those same efficiencies to operate the building because things were done a decade prior when the actual design work was done.
Well, Brian, the synopsis that comes to my mind, everything you said is, and this I've made this point pretty clear in the industry before, and some people don't agree with this, some people do agree with this, but I think what manufacturers should recognize now in the security industry, especially legacy manufacturers, is you have end users like Brian who are becoming autonomous, self-sufficient. They're self-educated. They can do things. They can map out things. They can design things. And so your typical consultant or your integrator who does maybe some of that heavy lifting is maybe not as needed as much. I mean, not saying they're not important, but when you have someone like Brian who can handle all those things internally and kind of speed up the process and saying, hey, manufacturer, I know exactly where I want to put your cameras, your access control, your intrusion, XYZ. There's always a sensitive topic there, Brian, in the industry about
Sure,
manufacturers selling direct versus going through a channel. So I bring that conversation up. I always like to promote self-sufficient end users, and you're a prime example of that. But Brian, we do have our first question, man, from the audience. I'm going to bring it to the fold. You'll appreciate this question. This question comes from Jonathan Everett. Brian, if you remove CCTV and access control, what piece of technology helps you and your team the most?
So one of the challenges that we have, and it leads into answering this question, is we have locations, as I mentioned, that are extremely large and extremely complex, where we have amazing integrated technology into these locations. But when you think about a smaller location, maybe a location that we acquire that we have not built from the ground up, maybe a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot typical doctor's office in a community that we have taken possession of, you may not have CCTV and access control and all the related technologies that we may have leveraged at a very large self-built hub staff. Awareness training, ensuring that your frontline staff are operating. And when I say frontline staff, I'm not talking about the security or the facilities or even the design and construction team staff. I'm talking about the frontline medical, clinical office staff that are actually at those locations, right? They become your eyes and your ears. And having robust awareness training programs and essentially assimilating them into your security department. Okay, we have an amazing security awareness training program that every new hire gets when they join this organization. It's done in person still. Obviously, it's streamed video, but where I am right now in New Jersey is one of our corporate locations, and there is a new hire class that physically takes place here. There's one that takes place in Manhattan. There's one that takes place in Oregon, and there's a speaker that is live, right? So it's not recorded. It's not a canned session where people are zoning out. My security folks actually show up live to one of these locations, and our video streamed to all the new hires around the country that are attending these global orientations. And there's a robust training awareness program, right? I love the one JDLR. I always talk about that. When I was physically doing the training, it was one of my real enjoyments, and I kind of miss it. I had to hand the reins over to my security folks where I'd be out in front of the new hires, or even just doing follow-up training and doing this robust awareness training program. And JDLR was always one of the methodologies that I used to hammer into people, and it's still in our program. When you see something that's JDLR, that's when you flip your ID card around and you call the number on the back to report it, right? We have our security control room numbers listed on the back. When in doubt, you call that number, make a report, and what is JDLR just doesn't look right? So the awareness training is exactly that. I always tell people, and we train people very well, that, listen, there's a square box of normal. And when you're in your site and you're at your location and there might not be any CCTV or there might not be any access control, you are now the front lines of protection of this site, right? And we train them, what does that mean? It means that if a guy comes in with a Verizon shirt on and says, hey, I need you to open up the telecom closet or the IT closet, we want you to question that person. We want you to call the control room. We want you to validate, is this person for real? Was this scheduled? Let's get a hold of somebody from the IT department before you take that key and just open that door up because the guy's from IT. There was a number of incidents a while back where biomedical folks people were dressing up as biomedical folks, and they did not hit us, but they were dressing the part. They were walking into healthcare organizations and they were saying, hey, I'm here to pick up the dermatology laser, for its preventative maintenance. And here they go, rolling the laser out and put it in a van. And, that's a $600,000 piece of equipment. Yeah. And staff just allowed that to walk out the door because the guy had a biomedical company hat on, right? So training, staff awareness, assimilating them into your security program, and making sure that they understand that they become the front lines to collaborate with the security department to keep not only the assets of the organization safe, but themselves safe, and the people, which are also the most important assets of any organization. So hopefully that answers that question.
No, I mean, thank you for the question, Jonathan. I do want to remind everyone, if you have a question, please drop it in the chat and I will feature it and ask Brian. We're about halfway through our interview here with Brian. Again, guys, this is Brian, VP at Summit Health. And, I talk about this often, Brian. I've said this for years. I say this every time I talk to someone that's outside of this industry, but I've got a lot of friends, man, in casinos. Casinos. That's my wife hates it because I spend too much time at casinos. But I talk about casinos being the most difficult environment to protect. And similarity to that, there is healthcare as well, because you guys are 24/7. And so this. If you guys caught the intro before we went live, I'm expecting a son on Friday. My wife and I are expecting a son this Friday. And the last thing that my wife and I want to worry about is our own personal safety at a hospital. And, you and I were talking about this the other day, man. We talk about, active shooters and firearms and active assailants and aggressors. Obviously, you don't bring a firearm to a hospital, but I'm in Texas. It's a right to carry state. You're in New Jersey. I know gun laws are changing there. How do you deal with, maybe like patient experience? If I want to make sure that we deliver our child in a safe, secure environment, I don't want to worry about, maybe another person having a gun on their hip, even though I might be pro-gun or anti-gun. To walk me through kind of that dynamic, Brian, how you guys handle kind of that situation at hospital, because weapon detection's hot, man. In the industry, there's a lot of weapon detection companies out there, but walk me through the experience, how you guys handle weapons.
I'll tell you, that's one of the larger challenges that we're facing right now, particularly in New Jersey. So we have locations, throughout the country. Like you mentioned, we have some sites out in Houston and the Texas area, and it's a different mindset, right? Depending on where you are in the country, where, if you're in Texas and you see somebody carrying, that person may not have the same reaction as they would in New Jersey.
It's expected here, right? It's like, it's a normal thing expected. Almost. Yeah.
So I'll tell you a quick training story. We had some sites out in Arizona that we had acquired probably 10 years ago. And we went out and we did training, and we had acquired these, probably 13 sites out there. And, we went out there, welcomed everybody, and we did some training. We did all of our awareness training, and we got into the active shooter portion of this. And I was actually the one doing the training out there. And, now in Jersey, when we talk about active shooter, we're talking about run, hide, fight, how to barricade, right? How to use cover versus concealment. The fact that run, hide, fight may not be linear, right? You might have to fight first. It's not a linear type of training. But, in Arizona, the funny story was, I can remember I was in a room with about 60 people, and I got into and I asked the question. I said, okay, you hear shots fired. What are you all going to do? And they all literally reached into their handbags. I forgot. I'm in Arizona, and whoa.
Here we go. Fight fire with fire, baby.
Right. And so that was my introduction, over a decade ago, to remember that when I'm doing training, I have to be, when we're doing training, we have to be, cognizant of where we're doing that training, because mindsets are different,
Right.
But back to your point, in New Jersey, one of the challenges that we're dealing with is the gun laws are changing. I'm a responsible gun owner myself, right? But it's a very hot topic of, if you are a person like myself and you're coming into a medical facility, should you be carrying a weapon knowing that you're going in for an MRI? Should you be carrying a weapon knowing that you're going into an exam room where you're going to have to derobe and put on a gown, right? Your weapon is now unsecure. It's off your body. Me personally, I would never, ever take that risk, right? So if I'm going, and I, for many years through my security and in New Jersey, carried a firearm, right? And I was very responsible with how I carried that firearm. And if I was ever going into any environment where there was even for a moment that I had to be separated from that firearm, I would make the choice not to carry that firearm, right? So that was my personal choice. So what we're finding in New Jersey in particular is that the gun laws have changed, where it was not easy, or quite frankly, almost impossible for a civilian to get a carry permit in New Jersey unless you were in some sort of law enforcement or security capacity. Now the average citizen can carry a firearm at will, right? I mean, obviously they have to be licensed and the applications have to go through, but there's no justifiable need anymore in New Jersey. So essentially is, if you have a background check that's clear and you meet all the guidelines, you can essentially be cleared and licensed to carry a firearm.
Right.
And what we're finding is that, you know, it's like almost introducing a new toy to people when all of a sudden they couldn't have something for so long. You're getting a lot of people that have that right and they're not making always the right decision. And I'm careful how I say this, again, because I'm a responsible gun owner myself and I'm not against guns. I want to, you know, but you got to be able to make that decision of, again, I'm going into a healthcare facility. I know I need an MRI. If you know what an MRI is, you know you can't bring any metal into an MRI. Why in God's name would you bring your gun into that facility, right? A locker that you're going to derobe in and put your clothes in for 30 minutes while you have that MRI is not an appropriate place.
Well, it's
And
common sense, right? Why,
Yeah.
if you have a surgery or a scan coming,
Yeah.
why would you bring a weapon? You know,
Why
you
would
have
you
to
bring
undress
it?
anyway. You know,
And we're seeing it where so what we're doing is we've actually developed an approach with our security team and also our staff, so that if someone does come in with a weapon into an appointment, we've taught our staff is to be very careful how you approach the situation, right? We don't want to approach it with a sledgehammer. You know, if there is some sort of a threat or you're feeling threatened for whatever reason, back out of that exam room, make a phone call, and then we'll take it on a case by case basis, right? To validate that that person should be carrying a firearm. That's number one. Number two, when we do validate that generally the person is licensed to carry and
Right.
it's appropriate, we've developed a script. It's a very distinctive script, which kind of meets right in the middle. And it's, you know, listen, some people are uncomfortable around a weapon, some people are not, right? So if we have a provider or staff that come forward and say, look, you know, John Doe came in, patient XYZ, he had a weapon, he's coming back again next week, you know, I'm very uncomfortable with being in the presence of a weapon. There's a script that basically, as a first step, is have a very middle of the road conversation with that patient to say, listen, you know, when you come in next time, I would really appreciate if you don't bring your firearm in, or if you lock it up in the car. It makes me uncomfortable, and it's just not a good place to have it in the exam room here, knowing that I'm going to have to ask you to undress. You're going to have to put that weapon unsecured on the counter, and it's just not a good situation. And what we have found, quite literally 99% of the time, is when you have a rational, well thought out script, which we developed, and you have a rational conversation with that said person, they get it, right?
Exactly.
They understand, and they return on the next visit and they don't have a firearm. I can only literally think over the last 2 years of one situation where somebody really pushed back, and interestingly enough, it was a law enforcement person, and actually responded to the script really irrationally, quite frankly. But you know, again, if you have a rational conversation, you follow this script, you know, most of the people are gonna play by the rules and abide by, hey, look, the provider is not comfortable. And the most important thing is making sure that the provider is comfortable, the patient's comfortable, so that the patient-doctor relationship is untarnished, so that proper care could be, furnished to that patient, which ultimately is the most important part of healthcare.
No, I agree. I mentioned common sense earlier and having a rational conversation, a humanized conversation, just treat them as a human. Someone made a comment. Esteban made a great comment. Common sense is sometimes not common, and I agree with that, man. There's crazy people out there that don't have basic common sense. But Brian, there's another question, man, that came in. This is from John. He works for the U.S. Department of State. His name's going to be blocked out here for privacy concerns, but this is John's question. U.S. Department of State. He says, interesting insights, Brian. Kind of normal question in these times, but where is cyber in your sphere of influence? So we talk about cyber and physical a lot in the industry now, Brian, about the convergence of that. So how do you handle cyber and kind of the InfoSec at the hospital?
Yeah, absolutely. My day-to-day, right, I'm not an IT guy, but I will say for any of you out there, if I could go back in time and become an IT security professional, I would definitely do that, because that is obviously one of the hotter topics right now, is the cyber. But I work collaboratively with our IT department, right? We have an IT security chief that obviously is focused on cyber. From my perspective, working collaboratively with them, I'm going to focus, and my teams are going to focus more on the physical aspects of it, right? The concentric circles of protection around the IT assets to ensure that they can't be infiltrated, right? That's making sure that the IT closets are properly locked down, have the proper intrusion detection systems, making sure, most importantly, that if there is an intrusion detection on an IT or data room location, that those alarms are responded to accordingly, right? It's great to have an alarm, but if nobody goes and checks it out, what's the point of the alarm? So physically making sure that the access to infiltrate our cyber is really, my day-to-day and my team's day-to-day. But on the other side of it, we do work collaboratively where, our cyber team, I will tell you, and it drives me nuts, but it's a sign of the times and it has to be done. No more junk drives, right? I can tell you right now, looking at my laptop, if I got a whole stack of junk drives here that are on my counter that I used to have and I used to be able to do all kinds of stuff with. They've been sitting on my counter in this little thing for probably 2 or 3 years now, because they're useless. I can't plug them into my computer anymore. We can't download anything. And that was a real hard learning curve for the doctors, right? If folks know doctors, they're creatures of habit. They don't see the world of outside of what they're doing often with the healthcare and the patient. And they don't understand that if there is a cyber breach, right, how significant that can be. So it was a big learning curve, specifically for the doctors, to lock down all the USB ports where you stick anything in, you can't really do anything with it. That's one part of it. And then also collaboration with running spoofing test emails. I will say minimum one a month goes out to our organization. And our IT department is really good at putting those phishing tests out. I often laugh at some of them that go out, because they'll put some out that are really well designed on purpose, right? And then they'll put some out that are intentionally not well designed, in order to see how many people will actually click on this intentionally unwell designed, right? Yeah. And I'll see these come out and I'll laugh and I'll be like, there's no way anybody in their right mind would ever click on this. And then you look at the audit reports of just how many people in the organization did click on it, and you'd be surprised. So, and then you got to target those people, and you got to go back and you got to make sure that they understand that healthcare is a number one target, right? Particularly from overseas. So really it comes back again to a collaboration with the cyber team through phishing attacks, limiting the ability to be able to access the computers, the networks, the cloud-based systems, any IT infrastructure that's housed on sites, and awareness training. And what I will say, is back in the day, kind of dating myself again, 15, 16, 17, 18 years ago, I can remember at our larger locations, when we would build these locations, our data was in server rooms, very large server rooms on site. And when I say I had like 6 levels of concentric security around it, like you would have to get through like 4 car access doors, 5 cameras, all kinds of intrusion detection systems. I couldn't even get through them. I had designed it so well. And then, about 5 years ago, a lot of stuff is now heading out to third-party cloud servers. So the on-site IT infrastructure that we house is minimal, I'll say, right? So it takes the burden off the physical access of these types of systems. But if you're going to a third-party cloud-based service, you got to make sure that you're auditing their data centers, right? So if you're bringing somebody in from, that says, hey, all of our servers are out in Iowa, out in the middle of a field, are your executives going out there from the IT department or from your security team to actually audit, hey, do they have the proper security protocols to protect their data centers? Because if they don't, and your information is housed there, right, you're still at risk. So it's an interesting topic, and it's definitely something that healthcare across the board needs to be really have on the front burner, because I think overseas we're really getting targeted on the healthcare end because they know there's so much information, there's so much personal information available if they're able to breach a system.
Well, that's my whole point. The pure velocity of cyber attacks versus a physical attack is, it's not even close.
It's shifted.
Right?
It's
I mean, and that's the concern in healthcare when you've got HIPAA and you've got patient records and medical records and financial side. There was a hospital last year, Brian, where they got hacked and had to pay like $60 million of the hack and ransomware.
Sure.
So it happens occasionally. So I think what I've seen now, at least on the physical side of manufacturers, is even our sponsor on this live interview, Imran, he's actually incorporated a cybersecurity element, a part of his access control software, which is cool. So it actually does like the pen testing, the vulnerability scans, making sure the network is not being compromised. So I think we've started to see more of a shift now where physical security manufacturers are taking priority with cybersecurity just because the frequency of cyber attacks are so common. But to your point, man, you're exactly right. It's always been like a checkbox mentality when it comes to that cybersecurity questionnaire or skimming an email, and they just click on it and they just, until it actually happens, that's when they take it seriously. And the same thing on the physical side, man. It's just, it's soup to nuts there.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll add in there too, and just, I'm sure everybody realizes this, but I'll just say it anyway. In healthcare, everything is electronic now, right? So 15, 16 years ago, I can remember our medical record storage, right? These were rooms with physical charts, and they would be controlled and audited. But, if somebody walks out with a chart 15 years ago, it's hard to determine. So the good thing is now everything is electronic, right? And you can audit and you can see the logs and you can have much more robust control. But on the flip side of that coin, if there is an attack and you're ransomwared out and they lock your systems out, you can no longer provide critical patient care, right? You've now been brought back to like the 1900s. And, you think about people that are, going in for surgeries and, going under the knife and going under anesthesia. I always tell people, when you're designing something or you're thinking about a budget, think about if it was your mother going in for that surgery, right? Yeah. Think about if it was your son or your daughter, right, being potentially put at risk. So you can't cut corners when it comes to that, because if there was to be some sort of a cyber attack in a healthcare system, right, you're now compromising patient safety. And, that's something that we take very, it's a high priority because, it's core to the business at this point, right? Everything's electronic.
I'm picking up on your leadership style, Brian. I actually like it because what you're doing, you make things you like to resonate. You make it practical, and I think that's what resonates with your team and why they, choose to follow you, is because you make it important to them. You do make sure they have a voice, number one, but number two, you make it resonate with them and say, hey, if this was your dollar, if this was your mother, if this was your father, how would you choose to operate this? So I think that's. A lot of leaders don't do that, man. A lot of it's just like, hey, you're going to do it this way. You don't do it this way, you're out the door, or you're not going to exceed. So I like that.
I'm glad you said that. Because that's one of my areas that I always say, I don't tell people what to do. I may tell them what to do, but I explain to them why they need to do it. Yeah. What's the repercussions, right? Explain. And it's not about, hey, this is what to do, but it's also education. You want to grow your team. You want them to have that knowledge base. So, hey, listen, if I get hit by a bus, they can go on without me and have all of that knowledge and grow and continue the operation. And, that's what it's all about, is developing your teams and making sure that they're educating themselves and not just doing the day-to-day work, right? That they're putting themselves into an opportunity where they can also grow within the organization. One of my lines is always absorb everything like a sponge. Even if you don't think you're going to need it today, in 5 years from now, you can regurgitate what you learned 5 years ago and potentially apply it in a situation that you could have never thought of. So absorb like a sponge, even if you don't think you need that knowledge base today.
I mean, being a continuous learner is 100% correct.
so
Man. I love that. Another question came in, Brian, from our friend John at the U.S. Department of State. He must like you a lot, man. So I'm going to feature his.
I think I connected with John on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you're gonna have to connect with John.
True.
And John, this is your call out, man, to be on a live interview. I need to get a federal guy on here anyway, so you'll be a perfect candidate. So Brian, thanks for the insight on cyber integration. Following up, do you dabble in the business, enterprise, risk, or resilience side?
Absolutely, business continuity. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great topic, right? Particularly in healthcare. If there is some sort of a challenge, and listen, it doesn't have to be cyber, right? On the healthcare side, if we have an infrastructure failure, we have to be ready to react. And as silly as it sounds, right? But if we lose plumbing, or we have plumbing problems at a location, or a sanitary line backup where our toilets go out of service, effectively, we can't treat patients because we can't have the public coming into a facility. So business continuity not only goes to resilience and making sure that the overall operation continues to go on a cyber end, a supply chain end is very important, but literally right down to bathrooms. My teams have wonderful partnerships, and it all comes down to partnerships. Everything that we do across every discipline is strong partnerships. We have, and I always laugh at this, luxury toilets on trailers, right? So we've deployed them multiple times, where if I have a site where there's a sanitary line backup, theoretically we would have to close for the day, right? Because if I can't have access to toilets, I can't have the public in the building. Nope. We make a phone call. Our business continuity plan is our luxury trailered toilets come in within 45 minutes, are placed in the parking lot, hooked up, and it might not be the prettiest thing, but our operation continues, right? So business continuity is right down to the toilet. So the answer is yes, totally involved with all that. We're always looking at the supply chain. If we have generator failures, gas line failures, God forbid I have a power loss, do I have 2 and 3 ways to get diesel fuel, right? If my tanks start to run dry, we have to have all of that in place. And yes, that there's a lot of planning involved with that, and a lot of teams that are collaborating, including design, construction, facilities, security, maintenance, among others, in our risk management teams. So it's not just me. So it's a group of core departments that make sure that we are ready to pivot at any moment, should there be any type of disruption to the enterprise. Yeah.
Man, all I'm saying, as long as those bathrooms are big man approved, that's all I care about, man. Same thing with flights, man. I'm a big dude. I gotta have some leg space, man. I gotta have some leg room, man.
That's why they're called luxury toilets. They're
there
not
you
just
go.
portable Johns, they're luxury toilets.
I love it, man. So Brian, we got about 5 or 6 minutes left, man. I want to encourage the audience, drop a question. I will ask it to Brian in his next 5 or 6 minutes, but I do want to pin a comment. You might know this gentleman here, Brian. I'll pin it right now. Esteban. I have got a baby obviously due in a couple days here, and I do this anyway. I look for exits wherever I go, whether it's out to dinner with the wife. I want to make sure where's the exit, so I have eyes on it. Whether it's going to a movie theater, definitely want to check for an exit at a hospital. It's not you cannot see an exit sign somewhere in a hospital, right? It's not like it's hidden. It's definitely very well lit. But this is a great comment. I think, Brian, you would appreciate.
I do, and I'll give a call out here to Steve Cutry, who's actually one of my team members on my facilities team from New York North. And his awareness on the security side, while he is maintenance and day-to-day operations, he is one of the best security eyes that we have out there. And his comment here is definitely a example of that he's always thinking in a security aspect. And that's the great part of the teams, right? Is Steve comes in and he's not just facilities, he understands the importance of security, right? Because we're all in this together, and all the teams cross collaborate, and that's a great example. So, Steve, thanks for putting that.
Yeah. Sorry, Steve. I see Esteban, so I've probably been saying your name wrong the whole time, my friend. So Steve, thank you for the comment. Well, Brian, I want to ask you one final question, just personally. If we get another question here, I'll ask you here on the chat. But
Sure.
2025, man, healthcare wise, hospitality wise, what are you seeing as the biggest threat to your jurisdiction right now? Whether maybe it's in design and construction, maybe it's facilities, maybe it's security, but the biggest challenge, biggest adversity that you have to go through right now in 2025 that maybe you're still dealing with or it's evolving. Walk me through that real quick.
Yeah, you know what? I'll kind of focus on the supply chain side of things, right? So if we're building or need repairs on critical infrastructure, one of my main concerns that's bubbling up to the top right now is, are we going to be running into significant supply chain issues, right? Which scare me greatly because we all know through COVID.
Had a lot of supply chain issues with that, man, on the manufacturer side.
There was a lot of supply chain issues, and that's something that's on my radar, right now in 2025 is if we run into a supply chain issue again, I mean, that can be crippling to the healthcare industry, right? Because we need to be able to turn around repairs and infrastructure and MEP components of our locations quickly in order to not have any downtime, not have to cancel patient care. So there's a lot of things that keep me up at night, but that's one of them on the design, facilities, and maintenance side of the puzzle, is making sure that our teams are identifying anything that could be critical infrastructure that all of a sudden could be hard to get, right down to chips everything's run by computer chips, right down to our generators. And if we have a computer chip that goes down in a 1 megawatt generator, that generator won't turn on because quite literally the size of a computer chip that's the size of a Post-it note, and I can't get that for 16 weeks. We have a big problem, right? So back to our resiliency and business continuity planning, what are we going to do to solve for that? That's that's something that's keeping me up right now. I'll be honest.
No, I like that. That's new. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard about supply chain issues since COVID. So I'm surprised that that's a thought. But you're right, man. Everything is continuing to evolve there. I do want to pivot to this just real quickly. And if you're okay with this, Brian, I know you mentioned your current infrastructure, camera-wise and access control-wise, you utilize AMAG for access control and Verkada, I believe, for VMS and cameras.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So back in 2006, which again was nice when I was able to develop the original platform and security program, AMAG was the selected access control system. That is continued to be our platform to this day. We have some disparate systems out there that are not AMAG, and these are generally at sites that we may have acquired. But the goal ultimately is to get everything on one platform. So, 90% of our locations are on AMAG where we have access control. And then Verkada is our cloud-based, video surveillance system. We've been very happy with it. Great, I'm the old dinosaur in the room where, I literally remember the cassette tapes, back in my office in my high rise in Newark where, you had to go in and change the little cassettes, every other day. If you had to review video, oh my God, you better put 16 hours of time aside and put your goggles on. The technology is so advanced now, it's amazing. And our Verkada platform, we've been very happy with it. And then one of the other critical pieces of security, business continuity, pieces of equipment or technology that I think a lot of people may overlook, but is so important, at least to me and to our organization, is the mass notification system, right? So we have 20,000 some employees. And one of our challenges was as we scaled out of the tri-state area and, we're out in the West and down in the South and there's different type of events. How do we reach employees if there's an event? So, we have a really nice mass notification system that we recently put in place within the last 2 years. It's got two-way communication where if we want, we can have employees check in. We can geofence where we want that communication to go out to, which was, is a fantastic thing. If I circle the state of Florida, hit the message and just say, hey, anybody that's down in that geo-fenced area gets the message. We have the ability to target messaging and then also have that two-way communication check-in if we so desire. So that's a piece of technology that sometimes people overlook, but that's a big one, and I like that.
No, I like it. I like to give the manufacturers a little bit of love anytime we do a
Sure.
live
That one's Alert
interview.
Media. I'll give them a plug. That's Alert Media that we use for the mass notification systems.
There we go. Alert Media, Verkada, and AMAG. It's the alleyway of Brian that's using. So, Brian, we're at the top of the hour, my friend. I want to genuinely appreciate your time, spending some time with me. But any final comments or recommendations, man, you want to share with our audience before we let you go?
Well, first, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. My biggest thing is, and the thing I would leave everybody with is, going back to that bar stool. Most importantly, you develop teams and you cross collaborate and you keep the three legs of that bar stool so that there's a platform when a project or whatever it is that you're working on with those teams, that bar stool becomes an actual bar stool to go sit at the bar and raise a drink and cheers your teams to a successful project. So keep it in mind, you keep that bar stool intact. It'll be the seat that you're going to sit on with your team to have a glass of wine or a beer when things go well.
Man, you're getting me thirsty now, man. I have to go pop up a bourbon here in a second, man. But
sounds like a plan.
Brian, thank you a lot, my friend. I genuinely appreciate the time.
It's been a pleasure. Absolutely.
Well, guys and girls, that was Brian Natale. He's the Senior Vice President of Physical Asset Growth and Operations at Summit Health. If you're not connected with Brian on LinkedIn, send him a connection request. Get to know him. He's doing some innovative things in the healthcare sector. And I'll say it again, he is truly a unicorn in the healthcare sector with all the things that he is managing, 3 different teams he is managing, and that synergy that he's creating. So I will be having a baby here in a couple days, guys and girls. So I will be taking a couple weeks off from SVIP Live, but tune in next month because I do have 3 guests coming up on SVIP Live. One's in education, one's in retail. I think it's former Walmart we're going to be featuring. So I've got a couple other guests coming up on our live interviews. And if you're not a subscriber yet of SVIP, make sure to subscribe. But you guys stay safe out there, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.